Welcome to NCLE3 Learning Hub. Imagine for a second that tomorrow, right at exactly noon, every single farm on the planet just permanently shut down.
Oh, that is a terrifying thought experiment.
Right. I mean, within like 48 hours, not only would the grocery store shelves be completely empty, but global trade would just essentially freeze.
Completely. It would be catastrophic.
Yeah, and within a month, governments would collapse. I mean, the paper industry would vanish, and the very roads we drive on, they just stop being maintained.
It would crumble.
Exactly. So today, you and I are exploring what is basically the invisible operating system of human survival. We're drawing our insight directly from a masterclass on the NCIO3 Learning Hub, which, by the way, is this brilliant digital platform conceived and built by Ola Boson.
Right. It's an incredible resource.
It really is. And for this session, we are analyzing the meaning and importance of agriculture. And I have to admit, like someone stepping into the student role today, this material just completely shattered how I view the subject.
It tends to have that effect on people, honestly, because, when we examine agriculture through a real academic lens, we basically have to strip away those romanticized pastoral images we see in children's books.
Yeah, the red barns and the happy cows.
Exactly. We have to replace that with the raw mechanical reality of how a civilization actually sustains itself. We are not just talking about some dry textbook definition here. We're unpacking the highly complex, high-stakes infrastructure that keeps a country functioning, specifically focusing on the dynamics within Nigeria and across Africa.
Okay, so my immediate misconception, and I think a lot of people listening might share this, is just the visual that pops into your head when you hear the word agriculture.
Let me guess. One guy standing in a field.
Yes, exactly. One person holding a hoe under the hot sun. It feels very manual, it feels traditional, and honestly, it feels a bit simplistic compared to, say, computer engineering or advanced finance.
And see, that image is exactly the myth we need to dismantle right out of the gate. Viewing agriculture as just a person with a hoe is, well, it's like looking at a single line of basic code and assuming you understand the entire architecture of artificial intelligence.
Oh, wow.
Right. The comprehensive definition laid out in our source text is very precise. Agriculture is both a science and an art.
An art.
Yes, it encompasses the cultivation of crops and the rearing of animals, sure, but it goes far beyond that to include the processing of those products and the active, deliberate management of natural resources for human benefit.
Yeah, the branches mentioned in the text were what initially caught me off guard, like crop production and livestock. Those make sense immediately. But forestry, fisheries,
Yeah,
apiculture,
apiculture, yeah.
which is the technical term for beekeeping, right?
Exactly.
And then the text explicitly folds in services like storage and marketing, which is wild to me. I brought up computer engineering a second ago, and I actually want to test an analogy with you based on that.
Okay, I'm listening.
So, it seems to me that agriculture functions like a massive operating system for human life.
Explain how you see those pieces fitting together.
Well, any complex operating system has a back end and a front end, right?
Yeah.
The back end runs in the dark. It does all the heavy lifting that the average user never even sees. So that's the forestry, the soil science, the apiculture, the complex genetics of fisheries.
Yes, the foundational layer.
Exactly. And then you have the user-facing front end, the marketing, the storage, the beautifully packaged food you buy at the supermarket, or even the agricultural advisors helping the farmers. People mostly interact with that front end and just completely forget the back end even exists.
That analogy actually maps perfectly to the mechanics of the industry, but I would add a layer to it.
Okay.
This operating system isn't just running quietly in the background, it is actively coding the physical world around us. And that dual nature explains why the text defines agriculture as both an art and a science.
Right, because science feels very rigid, but art implies, like, creativity.
Precisely. The science is incredibly rigorous. We are talking about the botany of seed germination, the chemistry of soil pH, the genetics of drought resistance in maize. That's hard data.
Right.
But the art is the localized intuition of the farmer. It's the ability to read a subtle shift in humidity and just know exactly when a rainstorm is coming.
Like a sixth sense, almost.
Exactly. Or looking at the behavioral patterns of a cattle herd and detecting an illness before it spreads to the rest of the animals.
Yeah.
You cannot run this system on raw data alone, and you cannot run it on instinct alone. It requires immense technical knowledge paired with profound intuition.
Man, that's fascinating. But okay, if we had this massive operating system, it still needs to draw power from somewhere, right?
Always.
And the text breaks this down by starting at the most immediate microscopic level,
Yeah.
the individual. Because logically, I mean, you cannot power a complex society if the individual human bodies within it are starving.
Right. Individual survival is the absolute base of the pyramid. If you fail at this level, everything else collapses.
Yeah, and the sources highlight the primary role of food production here. Things like maize, rice, yam, cassava, beans, cattle, poultry, and fish, all to prevent immediate hunger.
Basic sustenance.
But they also introduce this really critical economic angle. Producing this food locally prevents a dangerous reliance on imported foods. And, I mean, we saw what happened recently when global supply chains broke down. Relying on imported food is incredibly expensive, and it just leaves a population so highly vulnerable.
It's an economic trap, really.
Right. But beyond global supply chains, there's example 1 in the text. And this honestly completely reframed the whole topic for me.
Ah, the secondary school student example.
Yes, so the text describes a secondary school student who grows vegetables or rears poultry during the dry season, specifically to independently pay for their school fees and books.
Right.
This challenged my assumptions so much because I usually think of agriculture as this all-encompassing identity. Like, you're a full-time farmer, you aren't in the industry at all. But this example frames it as, like, a microeconomy, a side hustle almost.
And that reveals the immediate, tangible power of agriculture at the grassroots level. Think about the mechanics of what that student is doing.
Okay.
They are not waiting to be hired by a massive corporation. They aren't waiting for a government grant to continue their education. They are utilizing the soil, a bit of water, and their own labor to literally pull capital out of the dirt.
Wow. Pulling capital out of the dirt.
Yes. Agriculture functions as an immediate, accessible lever for economic mobility. It's the ultimate tool for self-reliance. It does not matter if that student ultimately wants to be a doctor, a software engineer, or a pilot. In rural areas, that dry season vegetable plot is the very engine that funds that future ambition.
That is so powerful. And I noticed they specifically mentioned the dry season, which feels like a very intentional detail.
Oh, it is a highly intentional economic strategy.
Why is that?
Well, think about it. In the rainy season, everyone can grow vegetables, right?
Right. The water is free.
Exactly. Which means supply is high and prices are low. But if a student can figure out the irrigation mechanics to grow vegetables during the dry season, they are entering a market with low supply and high demand.
Oh, they command a premium price.
Exactly. That is pure economic theory applied to a small patch of land. They are converting biological energy into economic energy to buy textbooks.
Okay, but that student paying for their textbooks with a poultry side hustle eventually runs into a problem, right? Like, as they get better at it, they end up with more eggs or more vegetables than their immediate family can consume.
They have a surplus.
Right, surplus. And a surplus forces you to look outward. This naturally triggers a ripple effect into the community.
Exactly. The surplus is the catalyst for the next stage of human organization. This is where the operating system starts networking multiple users together.
Yeah, and the sources outline the indirect employment generated by this surplus. Because it's not just the person planting the seeds anymore. Suddenly you need traders, transporters, agro-processors, marketers.
You also need machine operators.
Right. And the text mentions extension workers here too, which I actually want to pause on, because it's a term thrown around a lot in agricultural economics, but rarely explained.
It is often misunderstood.
From what I gather, extension workers are essentially the bridge between the agricultural research labs and the actual farmers on the ground.
That's a perfect way to put it.
So they're the advisors who bring modern techniques like new fertilizer applications or pest control methods directly to the rural communities so the farmers aren't operating on outdated information.
That is precisely what they do. They are the human translators for the science part of that agriculture definition we talked about earlier.
Right, right. So the farm is generating all these indirect jobs. But it goes beyond just employment. The text explains how farming necessitates the building of local infrastructure. Roads, markets, storage facilities, schools, and health centers.
It builds the town.
Yeah. There's example 3 in the text, describing a poultry farm that ends up heavily benefiting nearby town transporters and feed sellers. Now, understand how a mall works, right?
Okay, go this.
You have an anchor store, like a massive department store at the very end of the building. The smaller boutiques, the food court, the kiosks selling phone cases, they only survive because the massive anchor store is drawing in thousands of shoppers.
Right.
Does a successful farm act like an anchor store for a rural community?
The anchor store analogy works for the economic draw, yes. But I would actually take it a step further.
Oh, really? How so?
A highly productive farm isn't just drawing foot traffic into an existing mall, it is forcing the actual construction of the mall itself. The infrastructure literally has to be built around it.
Hey, how does a farm force a road to be built? I mean, the farmer isn't out there paving asphalt.
No, but the farmer has a ticking clock. Let's look at the mechanics of your poultry farm example. A farmer has, say, 500 crates of eggs. Those eggs are highly perishable, and they must reach the urban market by morning, or the farmer loses their entire investment.
Right, they go bad.
Exactly. So a truck arrives to transport them. Now, if the road is full of deep potholes, the truck's suspension breaks, or the vibration destroys half the inventory before it even reaches the city.
That's a huge loss.
It's devastating. Suddenly, there is an absolute, undeniable economic imperative for a passable road. The transporters demand it because their trucks are taking damage. The local government sees the tax revenue potential from a thriving market and funds the road repair.
Oh, I see.
And once that asphalt is laid down for the egg trucks, the entire community transforms. The local nurse uses that exact same road to get medical supplies to the clinic faster.
Wow.
Children use it to walk to school safely. The farm is the invisible architect of rural development. It physically reshapes the geography because the commerce demands it.
That is fascinating. The eggs literally pave the road.
They really do.
But eventually, those local dirt roads and newly paved highways, they connect to shipping ports and massive factories.
Yeah.
If the farm builds the community eventually scales up to build the nation.
This is where we enter the macroeconomic stage. The industrial machine.
Yeah, the text details how agriculture supplies the raw materials that heavy industries absolutely rely on. We're talking about cotton for the textile industry, cocoa for the beverage and chocolate industries, oil palm and groundnut for soap and cooking oil.
Pulpwood for the paper industry.
Right. It also emphasizes the foreign exchange earned through export crops. Things like cocoa, sesame, rubber, and cashew. Governments literally take the money earned from these exports to buy machinery and fund national development projects.
Oh, yeah.
The text uses example 2, the cocoa farmer supplying the export company, to illustrate this. But here is where I kind of want to push back, or at least challenge a very common assumption.
Go ahead, challenge it.
Okay, so in history classes, we're generally taught that moving from an agricultural society to an industrial one is the very definition of progress.
Yes, that's the standard narrative.
Right. The narrative is usually, we used to farm, which was primitive, but then we had the Industrial Revolution, we got smart, and we built factories. So today, when we talk about a modernizing nation, why should they focus so heavily on dirt and crops? Isn't that a step backwards? Like, shouldn't the goal be to skip the farming and just build tech hubs and manufacturing plants?
That is a very common and deeply flawed historical assumption.
Really?
Absolutely. Agriculture is not a primitive phase that a country just graduates from so it can build tech hubs. Agriculture is the strict prerequisite that makes the tech hub possible.
Right, how so?
You cannot industrialize a starving nation, and you cannot run a factory without raw materials. Even the British Industrial Revolution, which everyone always cites, was entirely dependent on an agricultural surplus that freed up labor to actually work in the factories.
So the factories are entirely codependent on the soil.
Completely. You do not get a domestic soap industry without vast amounts of oil palm. You do not get a paper industry, the very paper those history textbooks are printed on, without pulpwood.
Wow. I never thought about it like that.
But let's look at the financial mechanics of those export crops you mentioned. Sesame, rubber, cashew. When a country exports raw rubber, they aren't just sending away plant sap. That rubber translates into hard foreign currency.
Right.
It is the leverage a nation uses on the global stage to purchase advanced medical equipment, import software infrastructure, or build power grids.
Okay, but what if they just imported the raw materials for their factories?
That leads to catastrophic economic bleed. This is a concept called import substitution. Imagine if a country with a massive population had to import every single ounce of cotton for its clothing, or every drop of palm oil for its daily cooking and soap.
That would be insanely expensive.
The amount of capital leaving the country would bankrupt the nation. By producing these raw materials internally, agriculture acts as a massive shield for the national economy. It retains wealth within the borders.
It's a defense mechanism, too.
Exactly. Agriculture is not the precursor to national wealth. It is the permanent, vital engine of it. If you remove the agricultural base, the factories grind to a halt, the foreign exchange dries up, and the national economy suffocates.
Okay, so we've scaled all the way up to massive industrial level extraction. We are harvesting pulpwood for global paper markets, exporting thousands of tons of cocoa, mass-producing cotton. The natural question that arises for me when you look at that scale of extraction is, how does the Earth survive this relentless taking?
It's a very valid question.
It seems like we would just deplete the soil in a decade and be left with nothing.
And that brings us to the science of environmental preservation. This is where agriculture has to solve the very problems it creates.
Right, because the sources outline proper agricultural practices designed specifically to protect the environment. It mentions how forestry controls erosion and protects water sources.
Yes.
It lists techniques like crop rotation, mulching, mixed farming, and the application of manure to stop land degradation. There's this beautiful interconnectedness highlighted in the text, actually. The livestock waste becomes the fertilizer for the crops, and the crop residues left over after the harvest become the feed for the livestock.
A perfect circle.
Exactly. And my thought on this was about corporate marketing today. Companies love to use trendy buzzwords like circular economy or zero-waste lifestyle to sound innovative. But looking at this, agriculture perfected the closed-loop system centuries ago.
It is the original circular economy. When we talk about industrial extraction, you are right to worry about depletion. If you treat the soil like a mine, it will eventually run empty.
Right.
But proper agriculture treats the soil like a bank account.
Ooh, okay. Explain the bank account mechanics.
So when you plant a massive cash crop like maize, it pulls vast amounts of nutrients, particularly nitrogen, out of the soil. That is a massive withdrawal from your account. If you plant maize in that exact same spot year after year, you make withdrawal after withdrawal until the account hits zero, and the soil turns into barren, dead dust.
So how do you make a deposit?
Through the science of crop rotation. A skilled farmer will harvest the maize and then plant a legume, like beans or soybeans, in that same plot.
And what do legumes do differently?
Legumes have a symbiotic relationship with bacteria in their roots that literally pull nitrogen out of the atmosphere and fix it into the soil. They are making a massive direct deposit of nutrients back into the bank account.
Wait, they're pulling fertilizer out of thin air.
Exactly. It's incredible. And mulching, which is covering the soil with organic matter, protects that bank account from the searing sun, preventing the moisture from evaporating. It stops the physical erosion of the topsoil when heavy rains hit.
Wow.
And as you mentioned with mixed farming, integrating livestock means nothing is ever classified as waste. The cow manure replaces synthetic chemical fertilizers. The leftover stalks of the harvested crops keep the cattle fed through the dry season.
So the Earth survives the industrial extraction because agriculture, when practiced correctly, doesn't just extract. It actively regenerates the environment it relies on.
Exactly. It is a deliberate scientific partnership with the land.
Well, we have covered a massive amount of ground today, so let me quickly synthesize the three core pillars we've explored. First, we establish that agriculture secures the individual.
The base of the pyramid.
Right. It provides immediate food security and acts as a grassroots tool for financial independence, allowing a student to literally grow their own school fees. Second, it builds the community. The necessity of moving agricultural surplus forces the creation of vital infrastructure, transforming dirt paths into paved roads and building local economies.
Yeah.
And finally, it fuels the nation. It supplies the essential raw materials for industrial manufacturing and generates the foreign exchange currency needed for global trade.
You have tracked the mechanics from the microscopic to the macroeconomic perfectly.
And for you listening, I really want to reiterate exactly where today's insights originated. This entire framework comes directly from the NCIO3 Learning Hub. As I mentioned at the start, this is a platform conceived and built by Ola Thunbosen. And what's truly remarkable is the accessibility of this information.
It really is.
It's a completely free, self-paced, public domain platform licensed under CC 01.0. It was built specifically for Nigerian students studying for crucial national university placement exams like WAEC, NICO, and JAM.
And it proves that high-quality foundational knowledge, the exact kind of knowledge required to build and sustain a nation, does not need to be locked away behind an expensive paywall.
Exactly.
It's a critical resource, not just for students taking exams, but for anyone seeking to understand the mechanics of the world around them. And as we conclude our analysis today, I want to leave you with a final thought to consider. We have spent this time uncovering the mechanical reality of how agriculture sustains everything from our daily meals to our roads and our tech industries. So I ask you, If agriculture is the literal, physical foundation of our individual survival and our modern civilization, how disconnected have we become from the source of our own daily existence? And what would happen to the illusion of our self-sufficient modern lives if that foundation suddenly shifted?